What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. As I promised in yesterday's video, I'm going to be doing some different content this week, starting today with my top 5 Celtic games. Now, this is games that I've been at, live in the stadium for. They're going to be ranked. We'll start at number 5 and we'll work up to number 1, taking into consideration atmosphere, occasion, how well the team played, what was at stake, the result. There's so many different things to consider. It's really difficult actually to narrow it down to 5. I'm sure if you tried to do a 5 of your own, you'd realise how difficult it was when so many games that you've been at over the years and you just forget some. I think the fact that when you start thinking about it, the ones that spring to your mind as soon as you start thinking about it are probably the ones that hold the most memories for you, and that probably points towards your top 5. It was really difficult, but it's something a wee bit different. I hope you enjoy watching it. If you do enjoy it, let me know in the comments below. I'm thinking about getting some of the regular guys on to go through their top 5 games as well, because there's plenty of guys that contribute to the content that have been watching Celtic and following Celtic home and away for much longer than I have, so it might be good to get a few of the guys on and get them to do their top 5 as well. But you can let us know in the comments below if you enjoy watching this and you'd like to see more with some of the regular contributors. Before we get into the video, I have to tell you about our sponsors, OneFootball. You know the drill by now. You can get pre-match stats, line-up notifications, goal alerts, league tables. You can add widgets to your home screen. And if you're in France, Spain or Canada, you can watch selected SPFL Premiership games for free on the OneFootball app. It's free to download the app wherever you get your apps on your phone. You can download it by clicking the link in the description of this video. It's a brilliant way for you to support the channel, so if you watch all the time and you want to do something to help out, downloading the OneFootball app is the thing to do. So click the link below, get involved and let me know what you think. Right, here we go. So we're going to start at number 5, and it is the Scottish Cup semi-final from the 2017-18 season at Hampden against Rangers. It finished Celtic 4, Rangers 0. I'm sure you remember it. I think the thing that stands out to me about this game is the build-up to it. If you remember, that was the game that there was a video went viral almost on Twitter of a pub full of Rangers supporters celebrating the fact that they'd drawn us in the semi-final because they thought they were going to batter us. And we've heard a lot this season, because Rangers have ended up winning the title, that we've buckled at the first sign of pressure and all this shite. Rangers fans have been telling us every single season since they came back into the league that they were going to win the league, that this was the time. And at so many different points throughout the last 3 or 4 seasons, that's been it. This is the Rangers' time. They were going to batter us. They were much better than us, and it was their time to win the titles and win the trophies. And this was probably the most blatant of those times because they were absolutely buzzing that they drew Celtic in the semi-final. But there's so many other things about this day. It was just a brilliant day out. That's something that I've really thought about, going through, trying to pick a top 5. So much about going to football as a day out. I think it was brilliant weather that day. We had a few drinks before and afterwards, obviously. But the game was just brilliant. We absolutely battered them. It ended up 4-0. It could have been 5, 6, 7. And there was almost a carnival atmosphere in Hampden into the second half. Moussa Dembele's penalty is one that really stands out to me. It was almost like everybody was laughing when it went in because it was so easy for us at that stage in the game. And that's just one of the atmosphere at derbies is always good. But that one just stands out in my mind because it was such a brilliant day out, and the build up to it and everybody thinking that this was Rangers' chance and that they were going to beat us and put us out of the Scottish Cup. It was obviously in the way to the double treble, and little did we know that we were going to go on and win 4 trebles in the spin at that point, but that day was just absolutely fantastic from start to finish, and that's why I've got it in at number 5. At number 4, it is another Glasgow derby from the 10th of September 2016, where it finished Celtic 5, Rangers 1. This was obviously the first derby of Rangers coming back into the league, and if you remember, the previous time that we faced them was in the Scottish Cup semi-final in the season before, and they did beat us on penalties. So going into that game, we didn't know what the dominance was going to be like before that. We didn't know that we were going to end up running away with the league and that we were embarking on what was going to be an invincible treble winning season. We didn't know any of that. There was plenty of nerves before that game. That was where Moussa Dembele obviously announced himself with a perfect hat-trick It's rare to see a hat-trick in a derby. You think about all the great strikers we've had over the years, even Henrik Larsson didn't manage to score a hat-trick against Rangers. So to score a perfect hat-trick, left foot, right foot, header, and announce yourself in that way, because I actually remember before the game, people were nervous because Lee Griffiths was out injured, and we'd seen Dembele a couple of times in one or two starts and off the bench, and he hadn't really grabbed his opportunity yet. But that was the day that he announced himself, and that he really went on to be a player that we couldn't keep a hold of. You just knew he was playing at a level where teams would come in and make bids for him, and he did end up leaving, obviously, after a couple of seasons. But that day was where you really thought, wow, what a player this boy could be. I actually ended up on the TV this day as well. I think it was after the third goal by Scott Sinclair. You can see me just in the corner there, celebrating behind the players. That season, I was sitting just in the front row at the southeast corner there. So I ended up in the telly. I didn't know it until I'd left the game and my mates were sending me pictures and all that. But again, that was a brilliant day. Well, it was superb. It was just a fantastic occasion. The atmosphere was brilliant, as it always is in the games. But to win so convincingly, as I say, there was plenty of nerves that day. The first derby of them back in the league, and because they'd beat us in the semi-final the year before. But it was just absolutely fantastic. What a performance. And as I say, little did we know that season was going to go on to become the invincible treble winning season. So that's a really standout game for me. Just the whole occasion, the atmosphere, the result, the margin of victory, the way that we played, absolutely played them off the park. That is one that really stands out when I was thinking about this list. At number 3, it's the third and final derby that's going to appear. I know it's quite boring, the first 3 are all derbies, but it is the shame game of the 2nd of March 2011. This was the season where we played Rangers 7 times, because we played them in both cup competitions. The Scottish Cup tie went to a replay. We drew 2-2 at Ibrox, with the famous Scott Brown celebration. We went down to 10 men. We clawed it back to 2 each, got them back to Celtic Park. And the reason I've picked this game so high up the list at number 3 is because it's probably one of the most hostile, intense atmospheres that I've ever been at. Certainly at Celtic Park, it really, really stands out. Rangers get 3 players sent off that night. El Hadj Diouf was one of them. He got sent off, I think, after full time. We know that it went on to be dubbed the shame game, and the government flew off the handle and brought in all this legislation and started caning football left, right and centre. But that really stands out to me that night as one of the most intense football matches that I've ever been at. Mark Wilson obviously scored the goal. He knocked out Sasa Papac with the first effort and then sclaffed the second one into the ground. But it went in, pandemonium. And just even at full time, the atmosphere was still unbelievable. It was a nervy game, it was tense, there wasn't a lot in it. It was really scrappy actually at times, but it was such a relief to win it. It was also the night that Lennon and McCoist had that exchange on the touchline at full time as well. So there was just fireworks for minute 1 to minute 90, and it really just stands out in my mind as one of the best games that I've ever been at. Even though the quality of football probably wasn't the best, and it wasn't like it was a big margin of victory, it was a scrappy goal to win a scrappy game, and I think it was a 5th or 6th round of the Scottish Cup replay. But just the whole build up to it and everything that went on in those fixtures that season, it just felt massive. And as I say, the abiding memory is that the atmosphere was absolutely incredible, and that's why I've got it so high up on this list. At number 2, it is the first Champions League game. The last 2 are both home European games. At number 2, it is the 7th of November 2012. Celtic 2, Barcelona 1. I know it's became cliche over the years to say, remember we beat Barcelona. But we did beat Barcelona. And at the time, it was just bonkers, really. We weren't actually playing that well. If you remember, I think 3 or 4 days later, we went and drew at home with St Johnstone in the league. But that was the season that we made the last 16 of the Champions League. It was also the last time we made the Champions League, last 16. But you just knew that night that something special was happening. It's one of the really rare times in a football stadium where I could tell before the game that something special was about to happen. I don't know what it was. It was obviously the club's 125th anniversary. And I think a lot of people will say that played into it, and it definitely did. I remember being in the stadium really early because I like to go in and watch the warm-ups and stuff, particularly when we're playing teams like Barcelona. And I just remember seeing the sort of outline of the display before the game when there was hardly anyone in the stadium. And then obviously when teams come out, it was such a strange feeling when the teams were emerging for the tunnel, because you're used to Scars being up in there and singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," but everyone had their own like plastic sheet or whatever it was, and it created a really brilliant atmosphere. And I just think the feeling around the place that night was incredible, and it's one of the most unique matches that I've ever been at Celtic Park. But then, actually talking about the football, Barcelona, as they were always going to, dominated the game. Fraser Foster was absolutely incredible. He made a string of unbelievable saves, and you just knew that when Barcelona started to miss their chances, and obviously we go 1-0 up with Wanyama's header for the corner, you just knew that feeling that something was going to happen just grew and grew all night. Tony Watt comes off the bench, Xavi misses it, and Tony Watt scores that goal. And to be 2-0 up against Barcelona, it was surreal. Like it was hard to believe. I'm sure any of you that were there remember it. It was a crazy game. And Barcelona, actually, they weren't at their best, obviously, because they did miss a lot of chances, but some of the interplay and the passing moves that they put together were absolutely frightening at times. We defended brilliantly and we took our chances, and that's what you need to do in the games. And to beat one of the best club sides ever assembled, because that's what it was. I know Guardiola had just left at the end of the previous season, but that was still all of that team that won 2 Champions Leagues in the space of 3 seasons, had just won the treble. It was a special team, and to watch Celtic beat them was a real privilege. So that's why that game's in there. And as I say, it's just one of the various occasions at Celtic Park that I can remember. It was just a special game. Top of the list at number 1, it's a game that Celtic didn't actually win, believe it or not. On the 28th of September 2016, we faced Manchester City at Celtic Park, and this is by far the best football match that I've ever watched, let alone been at live. It was just unbelievable. The standard of football was incredible. You know, at the Champions League nights, the atmosphere is going to peak when the teams come out the tunnel and the Champions League music is on. Now, if you're playing a big team and they go and start passing the ball about and killing the atmosphere, and they go 1 or 2-0 up early on, then it can really kill the atmosphere stone dead. But if we go 1-0 up, as we did in the first 3 or 4 minutes through Moussa Dembele, the place just went mental. And then from then on, the standard of football was absolutely brilliant. It was a topsy-turvy game. We went 1-0 up, then it was 1 each. Then we went 2-1 up with Tierney's deflected goal, and then they go 2-2. Then we go 3-2 up just into the second half. A few minutes into the second half, Dembele scores again to go 3-2. They equalised relatively early in the game, I think it was. There's still maybe 25 minutes, half an hour to play, when they made it 3-3. And you're fearing that you might be clinging on at the end, but it was the purest game of football that I've ever had the pleasure of being at. There was no bookings in the game, no cards at all. There was very little in the way of niggly fouls. It was a very open game. The physios weren't on at any time. There was no diving, there was no cheating. It was a pure game of football. And as I say, it was an absolute pleasure to watch it from the stands. We didn't win it, which was obviously disappointing in some way, but I was just intoxicated by the whole experience of absorbing that football match from sitting in the stands. It was absolutely brilliant. The standard was unbelievable, and to be there in the Champions League group stages against Man City under Pep Guardiola, who they'd won every single game so far. I think they'd won their first 11 or 12 games before they came to Celtic Park. Just an absolutely unbelievable occasion. And again, that was the team, and that was at the start of the season, that would go on to become the invincible treble winning year. So incredible. You didn't know at that time that was the journey the team were just about starting on. But as I say, that night, it stands out to me like a sore thumb as the best football match that I've ever been at. And okay, we didn't win it, but the standard that night was unbelievable. Moussa Dembele, as I said, he announced himself that game against Rangers, that 5-1 game. But that night against Manchester City was incredible. His hold-up play was unbelievable. He obviously got the 2 goals. The first one he didn't know much about. The second one was absolutely brilliant. Sort of overhead kick into the far corner. He was just absolutely superb. And that was really the game where you thought he's already capable of putting in this level of performance against this level of opposition. And you knew that he was going places. In terms of Man City, before the game I actually thought somebody like Raheem Sterling might not relish being away at Celtic Park on a European night and a Champions League night where the atmosphere is so hostile. But he was honestly the best player on the pitch. I was really, really impressed with Raheem Sterling that night. Every time he got the ball, he was a constant threat. He scored a really, really good goal as well. And he was the standout for me in that Man City team that night. But as I say, it was just a pleasure to watch that standard of football match close up, live there in the stadium. It was an intoxicating experience, as I've already said, and that's why it is number one in this list. There you go. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it. As I say, we'll hopefully get some of the other guys on to go through their top 5 if this is something that you enjoyed. If you did like the video, comment with your own thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you later on in the week. Cheers.